if any, state the differences between selective breeding and GMOs.
I think that the two are very similar. I think selective breeding has more to do with breeding animals, and GMOs have more to do with selective breeding. It's not really breeding, selective combining selective traits in plants.
Well, the difference between selective breeding and GMOs are GMOs is where a specific trait, I guess, is moved into a different trait, so it's kind of like a mix between selective breeding. So, I mean, I personally don't know, but my guess is that they take a trait and they move it into a different trait.
Selective breeding is naturally crossing plants or animals, where GMO is changing the DNA of adding and taking away genes.
I think the difference between selective breeding and GMOs is selective breeding is when organisms do breeding by themselves, and GMO is manually breeding and mixing DNA.
Not much difference aside from money.
In selective breeding, there's no modification of the genetics from a scientific standpoint. So what I mean is that there's no artificial changes or modifications to the genes. It's only breeding best of the best or breeding specific traits that you're looking for. There's no artificial modification.
I don't know.
Selective breeding will cross different but still related plants, whereas GMOs will cross things from different biological kingdoms.
No, there's no difference.
Selective breeding is based on parents with desirable traits, and GMOs use genes from another species.
Roughly what percentage of fruits and vegetables do you believe to be genetically modified?
90%.
Genetically modified is about 20% in the market right now.
50%.
I believe 80% of fruits and vegetables are genetically modified.
Probably about 20%.
But in the United States, I would guess it to be probably about 60%.
25%.
About like 60 or 75%.
45%.
I believe about 10% of produce are GMOs.
What do you believe the major reasons for using GMOs are for?
To get a better yield in the field and to produce a better product that can withstand harsher growing conditions.
It aids in harvest yields, and you can actually take GMOs and, let's say in your corn you got a beetle, you can actually take, you can modify the corn so the beetle doesn't like it anymore. You can actually take it and you can inject a pesticide that'll kill it, and it can actually lessen the disease in the crop, and it'll bump your harvest yields.
The GMOs help increase yields and provide more food for our growing population.
I believe the major reason for using GMOs is to get what we can't get naturally.
Sure, why not?
I stated improved production and reliability in the health.
I believe they are being used to make us healthier.
It reduces the use of pesticides, it reduces the use of greenhouse emissions, and they can also increase integral components in them so that you get more nutrients from the GMOs.
Yeah, they're easier to farm.
GMOs are used because they're easy to farm.
We interviewed 20 students from Waterloo High School and 20 adults from the surrounding area to learn how much people know about genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. From these answers, does age, religion, or residential life affect the knowledge of GMOs? The 8 questions we asked are portrayed on graphs based on age and/or residential life. We decided not to show the difference in religion even though it was surveyed. Most people in our area that we surveyed are Christians, making our results not diverse enough to be of any use. Religion of surveyors. 29 people surveyed were Christians, 1 Jewish, 3 atheists, and 7 others. Where surveyors live. 19 people lived in residential areas and 21 in rural areas. Public knowledge of GMOs. 1 meaning the surveyor knows nothing, and 5 meaning the surveyor knows everything. 14 people answered 1, 8 people answered 2, 13 people answered 3, 3 people answered 4, and 2 people answered 5. How many times GMOs are consumed daily? 1 person said 0 times, 12 people said 1 to 2 times, 11 people said 3 to 4 times, and 16 people said 5+ times.
This graph shows how safe people believe GMOs to be. 1 was GMOs not being safe at all, and 5 was GMOs being totally safe for use. The majority of people chose a 3 for their answer. This pie chart shows what percent of fruits and vegetables people believe to be genetically modified. Many people believe around 50% or 80% of our fruits and vegetables to be genetically modified. This bar graph shows the amount of people who believe GMOs should be labeled. 85% answered yes to labeling GMOs, 12.5% answered no, and 2.5% did not answer the question. We broke down the previous question into people that answered yes or no and put them on separate graphs. From there, we compared where each person said they lived. Out of the people that said yes, about 53% of the people lived outside the city limits, while 47% lived inside. Out of the people that said no, 40% lived outside the city limits and 60% lived inside.
This graph shows if the people we surveyed believed the world would be better off with GMOs. 34 said yes, 5 answered no, and 1 had no response. We then broke those answers up by age. For the people who believed the world would be better off with GMOs, 19 were under the age of 18. 2 were between 19 and 25, 1 was between 26 and 35, 2 were between 36 and 45, 7 were between 46 and 60, and 4 were 60 or older. For those who believed the world would not be better off with GMOs, 1 was under 18, 1 was between 19 and 25, 1 was between 26 and 35, and 1 was between the ages of 46 and 60. We then asked people for the difference between selective breeding and GMOs. The most common answer we got was I don't know, which 15 people said. Following that, 6 people believed that there was no difference. Other common responses included that selective breeding was just for animals, that selective breeding was more natural, and that selective breeding did not modify genes. We asked what was the major reason for using GMOs. 20 people believed that GMOs would provide more food. 12 people said that GMOs gave us better produce. 6 people responded with I don't know, and 4 people answered GMOs are so we don't have to spray our food.